What if the thing killing your favorite industry isn't burnout, it's paperwork? And what if the smartest professionals in the country are quitting not because they stopped caring, but because they're drowning in admin work that nobody sees? Why do we ask experts to spend 2 hours writing notes after they already spent the day doing the actual work? What happens to an entire profession when the people in it can't make it home for dinner? Why am I only asking questions for this intro? I'm not sure, but here's a couple more good ones. And what if the fix isn't more people, it's giving the people you already have their time back? If you removed every task in your job that isn't the actual reason you got into it, what would be left, and would you still recognize your day? And if you're looking for answers to questions like that, you're in the right place. Welcome to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. In this episode, you'll learn how one founder used AI to give an entire profession 2 hours back every single day, and why chasing the newest model is often the wrong move. This one's for founders building in unsexy, overlooked industries who think their market is too niche to matter. My guest is Yannick, co-founder and CEO of Covet, an AI assistant that automates medical notes and admin work for veterinarians so they can spend more time with patients and get home on time. If you want more conversations like this drop straight into your inbox before anyone else hears them, get over to aiforfounders.co. Founders don't scroll for insight, they subscribe to it. So make aiforfounders.co your go-to. Every episode is a shortcut to years of someone else's hard lessons. aiforfounders.co is where you collect them for free. If this episode gave you one good idea, do me a favor and leave a review on the podcast player. It's how more founders find the show, and it costs you 30 seconds, and I'd really appreciate it. Let's talk about the real unlock behind successful founders. It's owning your audience. Social platforms can shadow ban you, change their algorithm, or disappear overnight, but your email list is yours for life. That's what Inbox Alchemy builds, the #1 distribution motion for founders who are done renting attention and ready to own it. You get guaranteed growth, a newsletter crafted weekly around your voice and your expertise, and partnership opportunities that turn subscribers into revenue. This is how you build a personal brand that compounds instead of resets every time a platform changes its rules. Founders are scaling past $1 million in revenue. Don't wait for the algorithm to notice them. They build a list that already trusts them. So head to inboxalchemy.co and start owning your audience today, because the founders who win the next decade are the ones building it now. All right, Yannick, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
100%. And did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, Yannick. It's a French. It comes from like French-speaking world. So in French, people would pronounce it, in a French way. But that's the right way. That's how most people call me today. So it's all good.
Give me the French way.
Yannick.
Yannick.
Yes, there
Yannick.
you go.
Yannick.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll do my best. I got a pretty thick Colorado accent.
Just do it whatever way is natural.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk to you, largely because I love animals, and everyone who's listening to this does too. But really, you got a 5-letter domain. That's just drip. You got to love that. co.vet. Oh, solid.
Yeah. It's a pretty good one. I gotta say that, when I saw that one was available, it was a pretty obvious decision. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy about that one.
Beautiful. And .vet, is that for Vietnam, or what's the origin of that domain?
That's not, it's for the vet space. It is a veterinary, veterinarian subdomain. It actually is, one of these TLDs that has been, there's a few of these now popping up, right? Like .mobile, .tech, whatever. And as far as I know, that one is actually reserved for the veterinary space.
Beautiful. Covet. Love it. Give us an introduction to the company. You have a veterinarian AI co-pilot. Talk to us about Covet.
Yeah, that's right. So basically, Covet is an AI assistant for veterinarians. The tool that we've built essentially helps veterinarians claim their time back. It helps automate a lot of their admin work, a lot of their medical records, and essentially, it helps them go with trust into their consultation room and leave at the end of the consults, not forgetting anything and not having to spend the extra hours that they used to have to spend, after consultation, drafting medical notes. There's a ton of admin work that needs to get done. That kind of all gets taken away for them and allows them to see more patients, deliver better care and also make it home on time a little bit earlier. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Beautiful. I love it. And, I've seen a bunch of different tools for health tech and vet tech. just seems like such a natural extension of that. So let's get into like just features really quickly. Are we talking about like note takers for meetings, things like that? What are some of the features for the software?
Yeah, it's in that category as a starting point. So, essentially the veterinarian takes it into the consultation and they record their entire consultation seamlessly, right? It's natural ambient recording. So I think, the big point is the veterinarians don't need to change the way that they operate. They don't need to change the way that they do their consultation. They simply record it. And then at the end of that consultation, we'll automatically go and draft their medical records. There might be, discharge summaries that they want to give to the client. There might be all kinds of other, kind of reports and summaries that they usually, have to produce by hand. We kind of do those for them. So that's kind of the centerpiece. We've now built a ton of other features around it, all in the kind of productivity space for veterinarians. So, we're constantly looking at, what do they spend their day, their time on during the day, and how can we help automate that and make it a little bit easier? So there's, clinical decision support. There's things around client communication, and there's kind of more and more features that we're adding on to that, but they're all centered around that same idea of how can we leverage AI generally to help, make their days a little bit easier.
Beautiful. And kind of feedback from your customers. What are the big time saves? Like what are the tools that they're like, this is killing it for me?
It's honestly the base tool is the killer one. It's the the medical notes. They're called SOAP notes in the veterinary space. It stands for subjective objective assessment plan, is kind of the core of the medical record that a veterinarian needs to need legally keep after every consultation. And they can spend hours every single day having to draft those. And so for most vets using COVID, it gives them back 2 hours a day is something that we see pretty regularly. So that's an enormous amount of time, right? When you compound it over a week, a month, a year, it's a gigantic amount of time. And the beautiful thing is every vet can use that time in a different way, right? Like some see a couple more patients in the day because that's what they want to do, and others are able to go home a little bit earlier and actually have dinner with their family. And so that's the kind of feedback that we get from people is I was finally able to have dinner with my family on time during the week for the first time in years, right? Like those are the types of things that we hear. So it's pretty amazing to be able to have that kind of impact on the daily lives of these veterinarians that are just really passionate people trying to help, the animals that they love so much. And so, we're doing everything we can to help them with that.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I know a couple of vets. I know what they want to do. They're boat people. They're out on the boat. They're doing like wakeboarding with EDM blasting. I know what these vets are up to.
Yeah, exactly. That's all they do. Yeah, they're very passionate people, and so I think I think we're incredibly lucky with the people that we're building for, because I think it's a very unique industry, and they're very very passionate people, and so it's great to be able to help them.
You bet. And I know this is very mobile forward. So the hardware that's actually recording the audio, is that an application through the phone?
Yeah. The vets can use either a mobile phone or just a computer. Actually, a lot of modern clinics or even older clinics have computers in the consultation room. So they'll use either a desktop computer or a mobile phone or even tablets. So we support iOS, Android. We have people using iPads. We're building an Apple Watch app even at the moment. So there's a ton of things. There's a lot of ways that they can record. Ultimately, the goal is for it to be just the easiest way for them. And mobile phones are pretty nice for it. Obviously, you can bring it a bit closer to the conversation. The microphones are pretty good on them. So that is one of the most popular ways to do it.
Beautiful. And this launched in 2023, is that correct?
Yeah, so we started the company at the end of 2023. We launched early 2024 actually. Our first customers essentially came in January, February of 24. So it's been a bit over two and a half years since we officially launched the product.
Cool. Let's go back to the inception, because you were a senior engineer at Apple, which naturally then you go straight into veterinarian tools. That makes so much sense. Like, how did you kind of conceive the product, and like what was the signal that was like, this is the way I'm going?
Yeah, so I was always really passionate about the startup world, right? I had another startup before working at Apple, and so I spent a couple of amazing years at Apple. Learned a lot about how to build great products, how to build at scale. Learned everything there from amazing colleagues and obviously an amazing company. But I was really excited to go build again, and I actually became really good friends back when I used to live in Toronto back in the late to 2018, 2019, and I became really good friends there with someone who's now my co-founder, Mike. And he's really from this industry, right? His mom is a vet, so he grew up in this kind of world of veterinarians. You know, he would see his mom take notes with her at, you know, during holidays to, you know, have to fill out paperwork, you know, so he really lived this as a kid himself. And then he actually built a first company with his mom in the veterinary space as well. So that was something that was very close to him. We really, you know, we became really good friends, and we kind of always knew that we would start a company together. And so we, you know, late 2022, we saw GPT came out, you know, and it was such a big revolution in the world. I lived in San Francisco, and, you know, seeing the new doors that it opened, it was pretty obvious to me that you know, this was going to change the world in a lot of ways. And, you know, my mind being how it is and loving startups, it felt pretty clear that there were just a ton of opportunities here. And so, you know, we really started trying to brainstorm around it. And I'm also lucky that I have a lot of doctors in my family, not veterinarians, but kind of, you know, human doctors. And so a lot of this problem space overlaps around it too. My sister is a doctor, and she, you know, just started working in hospitals, and she was mentioning all this admin work that they had to do consistently. And so it became clear that there was some opportunity there. But Mike pretty fast steered it, you know, to the veterinary space. He was like, you know, it's a better industry to build for. I know it really well. You know, he obviously had a lot of context. We had his mom who could help. And so we naturally started building for the vet space. And through, you know, some of his contacts, we got a group of beta users, about 20 vets who really helped us shape kind of the early version of the application. And seeing the very early feedback, you know, we got a really rough product in their hands. It wasn't great, it looked ugly, but it did the basics. And seeing how enthusiastic they were about that version of the product, for me, was a pretty clear moment of, okay, there's clearly something here, because, you know, this is still really half-baked and it doesn't work great, but already this version of it was saving them a lot of time in their day. So that's when we really, you know, started to go deeper on it, and then yeah, that's how we got where we are today.
All right, fitness peeps, let's talk about protein, because this one drives me absolutely nuts. Everybody knows they need it, and almost nobody can actually hit their number. I'm trying to get 180 grams a day. Do the math. That's like chicken at every single meal, plus more meals. And if you ever tried to close the gap with plant-based options, you know the usual trade-off. Lower quality ingredients, no real certification, and questions about what else is in the tub. That's why I use Momentous Plant Protein. It's a plant-based nutrition without compromise. NSF certified, third-party tested for purity, and built with the same standards Momentous applies to everything they make. It's the stuff that high performers like Rich Rowland and Dr. Stacy Sims actually use. And here's the smart way to buy it. Just subscribe. Click the link in the show notes, and my code stacks on top of the standard 25% subscription disco, so you get a full 35% off your first order. Then 10% off every order after that. It shows up at your front door, you never run out, and you never pay full price. And if you prefer to try it once first, the link still gets you 14% off a one-time purchase. The link is in the show notes, so if you're working on protein like me, set it and forget it. I love Momentous, I eat it every day. All right, big news everyone. Taylor picked me to be a fashion influencer, believe it or not. And I was strutting around the house telling my family I'd finally been discovered, that my modeling era had arrived. Then my daughter, without even looking up from her phone, said, "Dad, they probably just want a dramatic before and after pic." And that's fair. The before is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. But have you seen the after? The after's fantastic. And here's why. Taylor is an AI-powered menswear styling and rental service. And no, the robots are not working alone. Taylor pairs its AI with professional human stylists. The AI crunches your preferences, your style, your size, your schedule, even the weather. The human stylists add the taste and judgment. Together, they curate a box of premium menswear from over 150 brands and ship it straight to you. You wear it, you feel great, you return whatever you want with a prepaid label, and Taylor handles all the cleaning and prepping for your next shipment. And it's also a more sustainable way to do fashion, since clothes get worn instead of wasted. So whether you're influencer material or just the before photo with potential, go to taylor.style and use code Ryan30 for $30 off your first shipment on any plan. Taylor, dress better, live better, taylor.style. Beautiful. And how common is it with your colleagues at Apple? I mean, it seems like a lot of the big players are losing a lot of talent because, I mean, if you're a developer, like, you want to be an AI right now. It's just, it's so fun. Are
Yeah.
you seeing that a lot across the board, that people are starting to either go into startups, or they're feeling the attraction of Anthropic to get sucked into that ecosystem?
Yeah, when I left, it was a different time for sure. It was very early still, and so I think it was still an interesting time where there was still a lot of skepticism around AI, right? Like even at these big companies, it wasn't necessarily, we didn't really have AI coding tools yet that we were authorized to use, and so I think it was a very different time in that sense. What I'm seeing today, though, I obviously know a lot of friends that work in some of these large companies, and it's definitely something that people are really thinking about. There's Everybody's interested to be close, to some degree to the AI world, whether that means working at OpenAI or Anthropic in the best of cases for a lot of them, or joining a startup, trying to start their own idea. I think everybody, especially engineers, realize how much of an impact this is having. If you're an engineer, it's completely changed your work, right? Like to a pretty extreme degree. And so I think most people realize that there is something interesting for them to go and explore. And so I think it's a big challenge for these big companies that aren't directly involved in AI to how do you keep things exciting, and how do you still give enough opportunity for your existing engineers and your existing teams to stay motivated and want to build some of that future within your company. I think Apple has a lot to offer in that sense. Obviously, they're building a lot of amazing things, and so I think they still have a lot of that pool. But I'm sure it's definitely something that's keeping them up a little bit at night, seeing some of that talent go away.
Yeah, I promise I won't pester you too much about Apple, but since I got you,
For sure.
Apple a little slow, little late to the game as far as AI goes. What do you think their trajectory is? Do you think they ultimately are like acquire one of these smaller frontier models? What do you think they do?
Yeah, it's honestly it's a really good question. I think obviously they're in a really interesting position where they own the hardware, right? And they own really, really exciting and interesting hardware specifically for models, right? Like their
Yeah.
silicon chips are so far ahead of the game in terms of being able to run some of these local models. And when you see a lot of what's happening today in AI world and in open source models, we're really getting to a point where it's becoming viable for some for a lot of use cases to run on open source models, right? They're not that far behind some of the bigger labs anymore for most use cases. And so I think whether that's by luck, by accident, or by design, I think they've managed to get themselves in still a really good position with regards to this, because I think when these models are going to start really being run locally for a lot of use cases, they'll be in an amazing position to do that on MacBooks and iPhones. So in that sense, I think no matter what happens, they'll be good. I do think they obviously want to get things right across AI. It doesn't surprise me that they weren't necessarily first here. Apple is they take their time around new technology. They're not often going to be the first, and I think this was such a big and deep revolution with quite a bit of risk associated to it early on, that it doesn't surprise me that it wasn't something they felt comfortable necessarily building. And it maybe isn't also completely the capabilities that they're the best at, right? Like they didn't have that kind of deep research side on these topics directly. So my bet is now, seeing how this has all evolved, when you look at the capex expenses, they probably feel pretty good about the position they're in, not having to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to build some of these foundational models, when they can just kind of reap the rewards sitting a little bit back. So I think they're going to go kind of all in on that strategy now, and instead of, I don't think they're like trying to really compete on the front, the models themselves anymore, and they feel they
Yeah.
can kind of compete on the other side.
Yeah, and they're actually really in a great position, because if you think about OpenAI, Anthropic, basically it's a two pony race for the edge of the frontier, but they're only 6 months, 6 months in front of some of these open source frontier models.
Yeah.
So particularly like the tool sets that most people are using it for, which is like transcribing audio and organizing text.
Yeah.
What the veterinarians are using it for, what I use it for. It's like, do you really need to be on the frontier? Which is probably a great question for you. Like, how are you stacking models and basically allotting which tasks to which models? Are you using open source stuff? Are you using frontier for different things?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Look, I'll say a few things. We have a big medical team in house, so we have that's one of the big things that set us apart in this industry, and I think in general is we have more than 10, 12 veterinarians that work full time at COVID, and part of what they do is really working on model evaluation, right, and making sure that we're always trying out all the models out there, making sure that we're using the right models for the right task. Ultimately, they're vets, and they're the ones that can judge the quality of the output, right? Like us engineers are not able to know how good result is for the veterinary space itself. And so that's really what their role is. Obviously there's a lot of important, data considerations for us. Data safety is a really important thing in the healthcare space, and it's the same in the veterinary space. And so, we only work with partners where we have specific agreements with them in terms of, how they can leverage the data, and, we don't train models on that data, and, there's very specific conditions there. So that's always something that needs to, be taken into account. But we're experimenting, when we can try open source models and we can run them ourselves on our own hardware. So, we have the safety on the data side. We've been trying them, and, we always try new models of, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. And I think your point is true. It's not always the latest frontier model that performs the best for our tasks. And I think a lot of these models are being optimized for coding and for other tasks, but it's not always necessarily true for your specific use case. And a lot of people just kind of get pulled into, hey, the latest model is probably the best automatically for my use case. But that's not always the case. So we definitely use a lot of different models. There's always a trade-off, right? Speed, cost, quality, and making sure that you're using the right model for the right task is really important. So that's definitely something that we have internal kind of technology around routing, tasks to the right models based on those trade-offs.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Also considering, like revenue reports out of Anthropic, they're like about to hit $100 billion annual run rate. And, we still got a whole quarter left, and you just wonder, it's like, well, in 6 months, like everything that I'm doing now, how much better is it going to be? Now, I think a lot of those customers will just stick with the best product no matter what. So they're going to be pushing that line. But, everything else seems to be just like running towards zeros. Anthropic's like this, OpenAI is like this, and everything else goes to zero. It's going to be fascinating. So to your point, in 6 months, we might just have, 6 Mac Minis right there. And we're like, oh man, it's all free now. So
I can just run it myself. Yeah, look, I think obviously that's something that, anyways, you're seeing really interesting stuff these days. If you're looking on Twitter, right, there's a lot of different talking points around, you got obviously venture capital and then open source, and these big companies kind of have competing interests in some ways. And so it's interesting to see some of the discourse. I think ultimately what I truly believe is that it's great for the consumer. This is, peak capitalism playing out and the best technology rising to the top. And look, ultimately, the luck we have as consumers is we are consistently getting better models at cheaper prices. It's a pretty, pretty clear trend. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. So if it ends up with, open source models, that's, maybe that's even better. But, in any way, in any sense, we're getting great models. Our customers are consistently getting essentially a better product without having to pay more for it, right? And I think that's really where we as consumers can be really happy with. So hopefully that trend continues.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm kind of bought in on Elon's whole utopian look of the future with like free, unlimited power for everybody. I'm like, great.
I'm kind of with you there. I agree. We will definitely need a lot of energy for it. So we're gonna have to go and find that in the renewables and maybe in space.
100%. I need a rocket ship and just tool around with it. Why not? If it's free, come on. One thing that I was really fascinated with veterinarian products, because, it's such an amazing niche, but I was a little bit ignorant because I was thinking like, you can do all these medical applications, but you don't have a similar compliance, but then it looks like, no, you do still have SOC 2, you still have HIPAA, you still have GDPR. So I really didn't know that. Like, talk a little bit about the compliance in veterinarian space, particularly how that maybe differs from health tech and kind of what some of the, hoops you had to jump through to get all the compliance in line.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think a lot of people definitely don't quite know about the nuances there. Look, I think there obviously are pretty clear differences between the human healthcare space and in the veterinary space. There is, objectively speaking, less regulation because we're not dealing with, human data. And so, the direct HIPAA, for instance, doesn't quite apply to the veterinary space. That being said, right, that there are real regulations around data and data privacy, and there's the basic stuff that you need to comply with. But I think most importantly, we want to adhere to the higher standards, right? And so we've kind of taken the line of let's try to build this as if ultimately it was human healthcare, and let's try to adhere to the same level of standard and security. And for us, that's also because it matters for every single vet. We also work with a lot of large enterprise groups and enterprise customers. So there's, big veterinary chains, and, we need to be able to offer them, the highest possible security. And we work internationally, right? So we have, the biggest veterinary groups in Europe work with us. And obviously, GDPR compliance and all those things do apply there. And so kind of with all of that together, for us, the easiest position to take, especially wanting to go worldwide, wanting to operate in every market, is as long as you're there to the very highest standards, you'll be able to go anywhere, right? And so that's kind of, it was like, look, that's kind of the easiest solution for us, is let's just, be the most, the most serious possible with every single aspect. And that way we know that every customer is going to be covered in the way that they deserve and they should, right? And they care about data. Vets, want to make sure that their data is not being used for things that they don't want, they don't want models to be trained on it without them knowing. There's a few of those things that are really important, and so that was always key for us to convey that well to the vets and make sure that all these things are clear to them.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so you're thinking about this project. You have expertise as a moat because you're co-founder, and you've got some experience yourself. You put together kind of a deck. How did you go finance the project?
Yeah, so we started. Well, I'd say as a general point, we've raised very little capital in the history of the company compared to a lot of what you see today, and I think that's largely it's due to a few things. I think we've always been of the philosophy of let's try to do less, more with less. I think it forces you to make really good decisions as an entrepreneur as well. But most importantly, we've always had really great cash flow as a company. We've managed to get great customers and a lot of customers very early on, and so we've been able to actually bootstrap in a lot of ways our own growth without having to rely on external investors for a lot of the company's life. But early on we found a couple of great angel investors, some people from the veterinary industry, old veterinarians who sold some clinics and made some money and wanted to invest and believed in this. And a lot of that was it helped us to get some of the initial funds, but it also helped validating some of the thesis and having their expertise. I was obviously able to build a lot of the product initially, and we had a lot of that in-house knowledge as well. So I think that helped us go a long way. And along the way, we've raised a couple of rounds, and we found really really great investors who've backed us. But the main thread has always been that it's always been our growth that has spoken for itself, right? We've always been in great positions to raise money because our product was growing, our customer base was growing, and we weren't desperate for it because we just had such a strong foundation. And so for me, that's really something that was always important, making sure that you're raising on top of a really strong foundation, and you're not raising to try and get somewhere that you don't quite know if you're going to get to. So that was always a big thing for us.
Yeah, it seems to be a really cool development in this new kind of era as well. Like, what do they call it? Seed strapping, where the money you do raise goes much, much further, 10x further, so you can keep, more equity in the pot. How much have you raised in total?
Yeah. So we haven't disclosed all of our fundraising numbers. So I'm going to keep some of that, private, but it's definitely been enough for us to grow quite a bit. The company is we're 130 people almost today, in about 2.5 years, as we said. So but again, a lot less than a lot of the numbers that you see in the public domain these days around fundraisers. You see these massive hundreds of millions of dollar rounds. We're lucky that we haven't had to do that. To your point, we've been able to just raise what we needed to continue our growth consistently and build the best product out there.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it, but I was looking everywhere. I couldn't find any totals for your raise. I was trying to sneak it out of you.
I know. We're trying to, it's a thing we keep close to ourselves, and we're lucky to have really great investors who believe in us, and that's really what matters.
Amazing. Let's talk about go-to-market. So you've got the initial product, and you are one of the rare CEO/CTOs. I don't know how you have time for all that with 130 people.
I don't know either. Trying to make it work.
Podcast time. What's going on?
I know that. The cherry on the top. So I lead our engineering team and our product team. So that's really what my background is. But also the CEO of the company, and also taking those functions. I mentioned one of my co-founders. We have another co-founder who joined early on in the adventure, who's a veterinarian himself, and he's our chief medical officer. Has brought an incredible amount of value to the company and continues to do so. Mike, my co-founder, who's our COO, kind of leads our sales org and kind of our go-to-market motion. And there we really focus on two sides, right? There is the independent veterinarian motion. That's a very classical kind of sales motion. We have sales reps, and our goal is to get the product in the hands of as many vets as possible. On the other side, there's the enterprise motion, right, which is really big in this industry, as I kind of referred to before. There's a lot of groups out there that are trying to consolidate, so they get multiple clinics under one banner, and they want to be efficient. They want to have the same technology rolled out to them. They're looking for the best technology out there to make their vets better, their clinics better. And that's really something that we tap into because we have the best product out there for them, and so we kind of have those two motions working in parallel, and bottoms up and kind of more top down on the other side, and combining those to try and get really ultimately the product in the hands of as many vets as possible across the world. That's our main goal.
Cool. And I saw like a really cool motion you did like last week. It looks like you announced a State Veterinarian Association member benefit and a vet school partnership, essentially giving students free unlimited access all the way through school and then 8 months after graduation.
Yeah, that's right. Like the schools that we work with many schools today in the US, some of the best veterinary schools, also in other countries. And our product is free for students, actually. So that is a really big thing for us. We know the next generation of vets are in school today. We want to make sure that they have the best tools at their disposal to start learning how to use some of this AI, right? It's going to be inevitable, especially by the time they come out of school. And so making sure that they have that, free of charge, they can start learning this, and they can keep that product going, right? And when they come out of school, they already have it set up for them. It already works perfectly for them. And they can just transition it and start using it into clinics. So those kinds of partnerships are really important for us at the school level, working with associations and veterinary associations across the world as well. So we're always trying to find creative partnerships, and again, more ways for us to ensure that every vet can have access to these AI tools in the best way possible.
Yeah, very cool. And your pricing is super competitive, super easy to try, kind of a freemium, good, better, best kind of situation. How did you kind of land on pricing for the tool? And right now it looks like you're kind of a SaaS product, right?
Yeah, it's a SaaS product. It's a monthly or yearly subscription fee for veterinarians. Like you said, there's a free 14-day trial, no credit card, pure free trial set up, and that's always been really important for us. Most people that try it out, they end up subscribing because it's just the product speaks for itself. So for us, that's a really important part. On the pricing, I think a lot of it just kind of happened through normal market dynamics. As it was a completely new kind of product category, we didn't have a lot to compare it to when we first started. So it's always a bit hard to, find the right spot. But ultimately through market feedback, figuring out, what are some of the costs that veterinarians were already paying for some other products in technology wise, right? In the vet space, we kind of landed here, and it's been great. We haven't had to, change much to that structure. I think it essentially pays for itself very easily for vets. And so it's a great setup where it's accessible to them, but the value, pays back for itself, in a very short amount of time.
Totally. The veterinarian space also, it has like kind of a whimsy and fun to it. I would love to hear from you if there's any kind of some fun vet stories or animal stories. It's like I'm trying to think about features, and I'm trying to imagine like a parent comes in and they're like, I don't know what's going on with my guinea pig. Please help me. And they're like, well, we got some good news. We got some bad news here. Good news. It's pregnant. You're going to have baby guinea pigs. Bad news is, she's pregnant. You're going to have baby guinea pigs. I mean, it's just kind of fun,
Yeah.
Is there any kind of fun animal stuff that you've incorporated into the product or just kind of overheard over the last couple of years?
Well, there's a lot of stories, and veterinarians all have amazing stories of their time in clinic, and so there's people that come with cats and they're a bit confused, and it turns out they have baby lions somehow, or there've been the craziest stories that I've heard of. So those are definitely one category. We have built some cool, funny things into the product as well. We actually have a whole section in the app which is kind of a just for fun section. So you can essentially have it generate a song about your case. And so, again, using AI will actually generate like an AI generated song, which people love it, right? Like vets give this
Yeah.
to, when kids come in with the consultation, right? They can generate, a poem or a joke about the case. And so there's these small little things that are actually really fun, and clients surprisingly fall in love with these, right? Like if your vet can give you a song to go back home with, it's amazing. So those are some things, and we hear amazing feedback about those features, from vets out there. And so yeah, we're always trying to see how we can, make work a little bit more fun as well for the vets that use our product.
It's amazing. Hey, give me an idea of kind of TAM, because I think veterinarian, I'm thinking dogs and cats, but what about like livestock and agriculture? Is that a pretty
Yeah.
big market there as well?
Yeah, it is a big market. There's a lot of vets out there. People don't quite realize, but there's
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of veterinarians out there just in just in North America. You're talking about more than 100,000. When you start going into other markets, there's you start multiplying that. So the market is then comprised. There's a bit of everything, right? You'll have small animal is obviously a big section, but livestock is a big thing. We work with a lot of livestock vets as well. Equine vets are a big thing. So there's a lot of different dimensions to it, and so it ends up being a massive TAM, right? The veterinary market in general, I would say the pet market in general has been increasing and growing tremendously, consistently, right, over the past decades, and it's one of these kind of super solid markets. No matter what happens in the economy, people keep their pets, people pay for their pets, and people are starting to take more and more care of their pets. So we see it as a continuously growing market. Vets, and veterinary clinics and veterinary profession is, technology is becoming more and more common. It's being used in more and more things. So it's this kind of ever-growing market that's all going in the right directions for us. But yeah, I gotta say, even I was surprised by just how many vets there are out there. It's a never-ending thing, and it continues to grow every year. So we're seeing more of these schools showing up, and we need more vets. There's also a big shortage of vets out there today.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of big storm that continues to grow.
Boy, you said equine. I mean, I have a beautiful cat. Her name is Bird, and she's been to the vet, I think, like once or twice. I mean, cats don't get hurt, they don't get sick.
Not
But
as
I got
much,
buddies
yeah.
that got horses. Every
yeah.
other day, those horses
Yeah.
got something wrong. They need stitches or they need a shot. I
Yeah.
mean, why are
They're-
horses so fragile?
Well, look, obviously I'm not a vet, right? So I don't know, but from what I hear here, they're expensive. First of all, they're expensive animals, and so people want to take care of them, right? Like a horse is a big investment, and you want your horse to do well for a lot of reasons, and so there's definitely a lot of attention there, and they're big animals that do a lot of stuff depending on what they're being used for, wherever they're living. So we definitely see it as it's a big category. We work with some of the leading equine veterinary groups across the world use co-vet, and it's a massive segment, and they have to write a lot of paperwork when they take care of those horses, because they charge quite a bit and they have to be able to justify it. So they need to show what they did, and so obviously documentation is a really big thing for them as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely more care there than in some of the feline. But the feline segment is growing a lot as well in terms of veterinary care. It used to be only dogs that would go to the vet, right? And the cat segment is growing a ton as well.
Interesting. Very cool. Okay, we're at the time in the podcast where we're going to go to the quantum round. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Then we're going to start with the founder challenge question. And I will have to give a shout out because the founder challenge question is brought to us by our sponsor, Tailor.ai. And Tailor.ai is a men's fashion subscription service. So, Yannick, I can tell, or I'm sorry, Yannick,
Yeah,
I'm going to get there.
you got it.
I
you
can
got it.
tell you, like me, part of the black t-shirt gang. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like all day at work, I'm a black t-shirt guy, but more and more, I'm doing keynote speaking events. I'm doing panel discussions. I'm hosting all these events outside of the desk. And I took a look in the mirror, and my entire wardrobe was brought to you by Costco. And I said to myself, this cannot be like this. And I don't want to go to the mall. Well, that's where Tailor Style comes in, because you have an AI-assisted personal stylist that sends you 6 outfits a month. You don't have to do the laundry. You don't have to do the shopping. They put it all together for you. And if you're built like me, which is kind of like a plebeian, like I have a very long torso and arms, but stumpy legs, they can piece it all together, make sure you look good. So I want to give a shout out to Taylor.ai for sponsoring the program. Okay, so what we've got here is the founder challenge question. So what's an authentic version or piece of yourself that you really don't share with the business world?
That's a great question. I would say, I mean, my sports side is a huge it's a huge thing for me. So both in terms of just the passion and what I watch and what I like to follow and use, but also just in terms of doing. So I got to be out there and do something multiple hours almost every single day. Otherwise, I don't quite survive. And so, I think that's something that's really important to me. I've done, a lot of my life is built around that and people I've met and, great memories and stories I've built in my life are around sports. And, it's not always, when I'm behind my computer working, that's not really a thing that's present, but in the rest of my life, it is a really big piece.
Yeah. What sports?
So I grew up playing a lot of tennis. I played some college tennis in the US, and so that is really my main sport is tennis. But these days, I play a lot of soccer growing up as well. I run a lot these days, did some marathons, a lot of biking, just came back from a weekend of biking in the mountains. Right. Just trying to stay busy with everything I can.
Amazing. And where are you from?
So I'm from Switzerland. I'm Swiss and Dutch. I grew up in Switzerland. My two parents are Dutch. So I got the mix there.
Nice. What part of Switzerland?
Geneva, Switzerland. Have you been, or do you know?
I spent a summer in Zurich.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So it's on the other side. It's in the French speaking side of Switzerland. But yeah, it's beautiful country. Yeah.
I remember I was there for Zurich Fest or something like that. You know, and it was the fireworks started exactly at midnight.
Everything is on time here. I always tell people when you're in Switzerland and you go to take the train, for instance, you'll get announcements in the train station being, like we're apologizing, your train 123 is 2 minutes late.
Yeah.
And that's the type of detail that the Swiss care about. Your trains cannot be more than a minute late, or it has to be announced publicly and you're shamed for it. So that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, that's very Swiss. Has that rubbed off on you? Do you find that to be kind of a pestering thing, or do you think it gives you a superpower?
I think it's helpful. I think from me in the business world, I think trying to be on time, trying to be conscientious, try to get back to people fast is definitely something that I take to heart. People are always surprised by how fast I answer emails or all of that, and I just think it's a great way of doing business, and ultimately there's really no downsides to it, and so I like operating the Swiss way in business as well.
Love it. And you said you run marathons, which gives you a lot of road time. Like what do you find your mind doing when you're running? Are you reflecting on work? Are you kind of imagining new products?
Yeah, honestly, a bit of everything. So it depends a little bit on the runs. If they're really hard, more speed runs, there's honestly not a lot of thinking going on in my brain. It kind of helps clear, which is a big reason that I love running as well. It's one of the moments that I can completely clear my brain. But otherwise, I'll listen to podcasts, frankly, when I do long runs. So, there's a number of the classic, business and technology podcasts that I will try to listen to when I got these really long runs. It's one of the few moments that I can, set aside a couple hours to listen to longer episodes is when I go on long runs. So I kind of like that combo.
Love it. What are some of your favorite podcasts for business and technology?
I'm a pretty vanilla guy, but I love Acquired. I've been listening to a lot of Acquired, so that got me through an entire marathon, training period. Was 4-hour episodes will go a long way. So a lot of Acquired. I used to listen to a lot of this goes back a few years, but a lot of How I Built This was a podcast that I liked a lot from Guy Raz. So those are probably two of the main ones. I don't listen to many other ones, but I think those are two pretty high quality ones that I like to listen to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Acquired. To drop like a 4-hour podcast on like 3 years of Google, it's great. Like every minute is like worth it. I love that podcast.
Yeah, it's honestly a pretty special podcast. And there's a few great episodes about Swiss, there's Rolex and some other episodes that are definitely worth listening to if you're interested in watches, for instance. So yeah, they have great episodes about a bit of everything.
Powerful. Amazing. You're a builder, and the audience of this podcast loves ideas. So, what do you got on the back burner? What would you love to see somebody build? Business ideas.
That's a great question. I've been lucky enough that, like these couple years to be so incredibly busy with building COVID that it's something that I haven't had to think about as much, because it's something that my brain always automatically goes to is seeing ideas everywhere. That being said, with everything happening and also building a business, you do end up seeing just a lot of ideas of random products where you're like, oh, I wish I could use this right now for the company. So I don't have great ideas right now, but it's funny when I'm thinking about sometimes, taxes, sales tax, as we're growing internationally, there's so much compliance work, so much paperwork that needs to be done. And I know there are actually, now I've found some cool companies that are building some kind of AI, automations around that and AI tools. But I think basic ideas like that, where you can leverage AI to help make these really manual things that just take a lot of time in companies that are important, so they're worth paying money for. I think those are some of the best ideas available today. A lot of people want to focus on the sexy stuff, but sometimes you just got to find something that's very real, very problematic, that people pay a lot of money and have to solve in very manual ways today, and AI is perfect disruption for that. So those kinds of ideas, I think today I just see a ton of them as I'm building the business, where you're like, oh man, if something existed, I would easily pay quite a bit of money, right, to just be able to throw it at a piece of software instead of having to pay people to spend time doing this.
100%. And how do you manage focus? Because I think all founders, they run into shiny object syndrome or side quests or other businesses. People are always trying to rope you into their project. Like, is it helpful and creative to you to have kind of side things, or do you like stay disciplined in some way to keep your focus in one direction?
I like having some side stuff, not things that actually take a lot of time, but it's great to be able to sometimes focus on a completely different problem set for an hour. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of great friends that are also running companies and startups, and so being able to help them with their companies and just focus on a problem that they're having and help them solve it is definitely something that helps me quite a bit. I think ultimately our company is growing so much, it's doing so well that's something that helps quite a bit combat any FOMO around wanting to do a lot of other things, because it's like the best investment I can make right now is continuing to help this company grow as much as it is. So that helps quite a bit there. But intellectually, I love staying busy with other stuff, and again, just having other friends building companies right now, seeing everything that's happening in the AI space. It's really nice to be able to take your mind off sometimes a little bit as well. And I think it's not always healthy to just be focused on one thing forever. So it helps quite a bit to be able to spend some brain power on some other problems as well.
Yeah. End of the day, you've already put in your 5-mile run. We'll say 10-mile run. 10-mile run morning. You close the laptop. You're done for the day. Who are you?
A very social person. Love spending time with friends. Love spending time with my family. I'm a nerd in a lot of ways, but very much not a nerd in a lot of other ways. And so love spending a lot of time with people. And doing a lot of outdoor stuff. Doing a lot of sports, as I said. But at the base of it, I think just spending quality time with the people I love a lot is something that's huge to me. So that's what a lot of my week is when the computer is off. I love traveling, love cultures and languages. I've been around the world and spent a lot of time in a lot of different countries and learned a lot of different languages, and so that's a big part of what I love as well. So yeah, those are the things that have taken a lot of my time in my life and will continue to do so in the future as well.
Cool. And one thing you educated me on is, you're working with veterinarians and they really have a really stressful job. And some people might not know this, but you work closely with an organization that helps veterinarians with their mental health stuff. And it's Not One More Vet, or NOMV.org. People can check that out. Tell us a little bit about that organization.
Yeah, for sure. So Not One More Vet is a great charity organization. There's a lot of mental health challenges in the veterinary space. Historically, it's been one of the industries with the highest amount, the highest suicide rates among their professionals. And, a lot of that comes from the very high stress that comes with it. It's a lot of people that care tremendously about what they do, and they take things very personally, and, they can run into a lot of these mental issues. And so it's an organization that tries to, help around these issues, help vets directly that need the help with prevention. And so, we've had various partnerships with them in the past, and it's just a great organization that we always try to support when we can, and then get people to support. So definitely recommend you checking it out, and if you can give something, I think it's a great cause.
Beautiful. Yannick, this has been awesome. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. I'm trying so hard.
You got it. Awesome.
This has been awesome. Congratulations on an amazing company. I'd love to have you back and see what's on tap in a couple of months. Everybody can check it out. It's co.vet. What's the best place for people to connect with you personally online?
Probably LinkedIn is probably the best place to go and find me. So I'm sure you can put a link up to that. Love for people to reach out, and always love to talk about how it can help business ideas, startup ideas, or anything else really. Feel free to reach out.
I love it. Shout out to Amy with 983 Group for facilitating the interview. This was a great conversation. Yannick, thank you so much.
Ryan, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Founders, you know better than anyone. The game changed overnight. Every industry runs on AI now. Medicine, law, finance, design, all of it. And while you're busy building the future, there's a whole generation of students about to enter the workforce who have no idea how to compete in it. AInativestudent.com fixes that. It's one-on-one AI coaching built specifically for high school and college students, personalized to their goals, their career path, their actual life. Your kid isn't learning to code, they're learning how to be fluent in the operating system of modern work. And colleges and employers, they're already noticing. Head to AInativestudent.com. It takes a couple minutes to apply for your student and lock in the 30-day money-back guarantee. The window to get ahead is right now. AInativestudent.com, and definitely have them sign up for the AI chat. It's the fastest growing for students in the world. Every week I sit down and ask myself one question. What do founders actually need to know about AI right now? Not the think pieces or the stuff that sounds impressive, the real useful put it to work today stuff. Then I write it up, send it to you in your inbox free. That newsletter is called AI for Founders, and I built it because I was tired of wading through hit pieces and people that are afraid of the future. Each issue I break down the tools worth your time, the strategies that are working, and the ways you can use AI to grow your company without burning out or getting left behind. Thousands of founders read it every week, and I'd love for you to be one of them. Subscribe for free at aiforfounders.co. 3 seconds to sign up, and I promise it's worth it. Every founder I know is posting on LinkedIn, grinding on X, maybe dabbling in short-form video. And the dirty secret nobody wants to say out loud is you don't own any of it. One algorithm change and your audience evaporates overnight. The only audience you actually own is your email list. That's why the smartest founders in the world are building newsletters, and Inbox Alchemy builds it for you. They create your weekly founder newsletter, design a beautiful newsletter website, and grow your audience to 25,000 subscribers in the first 6 months. All of it is managed so it drives real pipeline. It builds your reputation, it nurtures the relationships that turns into deals, partnerships, and opportunities you can't even predict yet. Social is rented, email is owned. The founders who figured that out early win for decades. Go to inboxalchemy.co, that's inboxalchemy.co, and start building the audience that's actually yours. What if you had a partnership manager working for your podcast full-time, reaching out to brands, securing deals, handling all the back and forth while you just focused on making great content? That's Casey. Casey is the AI partnership agent from Howdy who actually goes out and gets your sponsors. Casey reaches out to brands on your behalf, works the conversation, and lands the partnership. You make the show, Casey makes the money. And look, Casey doesn't sleep, she doesn't lose track of follow-ups, and she never gets discouraged by a non-reply. Casey's out there right now working for podcasters who figured this out before you did. The only question is whether your show has a Casey yet. So go meet Casey at gethowdy.com. That's GETHOWDI.com. It takes a couple of minutes to get started, and Casey gets to work immediately. That's gethowdy.com.